Good afternoon. Well, thank you for being here at Tableau Conference. Today, we're going to talk about some of the mechanics of the Tableau mobile app. At Tableau, we use our own products, and from time to time, we face the same IT and security challenges that you probably do at your organization. So we're going to talk about some of these challenges and how you can deploy the Tableau mobile app at an enterprise scale and create an enjoyable experience for the users. Hi, my name is Shyam. I'm a developer on the Tableau mobile team. I've been with Tableau for about 3 years, and this is my 4th conference. Paul, tell us something about yourself.
I'm also a developer on the Tableau mobile team. My name is Paul Carden, and this is a picture of me last year at Data Night Out. So who's going to Data Night Out? All right, it's going to be awesome. Last year I was able to find and partially consume this ice cream bar before my picture was taken. You may wonder why I'm holding an ice cream bar. Well, the problem is I couldn't find any pie. Otherwise I would have been eating pie. And it seems like at a data conference, if you have bars, you should have pies too. Just kind of makes sense, right? Thank you. Try the veal. Okay. Shyam and I are just part of a Tableau mobile development team that includes not only developers, we've got test, we've got user experience, support, and of course, good documentation as well. But enough about us. Let's talk a little bit about you for a minute. I've got some categories listed here. Who considers himself a Tableau champion? So someone that's trying to bring Tableau Mobile into their enterprise. Raise your hand. Great. We've got a lot of good information for you, and most of it is things that you're going to be passing on to the people in these next 2 categories. So server administrators, anybody in charge of Tableau servers? Great. You're going to want to know what type of authentication methods Tableau Mobile supports and interacts with, as well as how we can connect to the server. Anybody here on the IT side of things, so operations or security? Okay, a few of those, great. We'll talk quite a bit about things that are applicable to you as you want to make sure that your environment is secure and safe for your data, as well as enjoyable for your users. I feel like we may have a couple people from an extra category here. There are people that are vendors or companies who do connectivity for mobile enterprise solutions, maybe? I saw some vendor necklaces, so I thought maybe some of you guys are in the mobile connectivity space. All right, well, whatever your role is, you have the same goal that we do. You want to enable your users to be able to use Tableau Mobile in your corporate environment. Now, I want to mention that depending on what your role is, some of this information may seem a little bit advanced or esoteric. Don't worry about that. First of all, you made it to the 3rd floor, so you're in the top, percentile of people here at the conference because you found us. And then we'll have plenty of documentation that we'll reference. And so if something sounds new and unfamiliar, you can read up on it or, again, pass it on to those people that are in charge of the IT areas. All right, let's talk a little bit about our agenda. We want to give you, as enterprise customers, guidance on how you can deploy Tableau Mobile into your environment and make it an enjoyable experience for your users. We'll start with a welcome. Welcome, everybody, and an introduction, not only of ourselves, but Shyam's going to introduce you to the Tableau Mobile app and talk a little bit about it. Then we'll talk really about the core issue of getting to your data. You need to be able to sign into that Tableau server. You need to be able to get to that data and have it come back to your mobile device so that you can have your visualizations on the go and when you need them. We'll talk quite a bit about mobile device management. This is a technology that helps you go through this sign-in process easy through configurations that happens on a server side and makes it easier for your users to connect, to sign in and authenticate. Finally, at the end, we'll have some lanyards. And we'll explain that later, but I hope you're all looking forward to them. All right, hey, Shyam, tell us a little bit about the Tableau mobile app.
Yeah, sure. All right, let's get started. So this is the mission of our Tableau mobile product. Tableau Mobile is the fastest and most delightful way to stay on top of your data. There are a few pieces to this statement. First, we believe that mobile products should be fast. You're on the go. You want to pull out your mobile device, get to your data, and answer that question quickly. Second, mobile devices are personal. They have touch interactivity, and they should be delightful to use. Third, we believe not only mobile is a entirely new way of interacting with data, but it's a different form. It has a different form factor also. So our current Tableau Mobile product is available in app stores. It's available for iOS and Android. You can use it on phones or tablets. By a show of hands, how many people here have used the Tableau Mobile app before? All right, that's a good number. And how many of you have used this on iOS platforms? Okay, I assume the rest are on Android.
I use Android.
Okay, great. Yeah, some representation there. Yeah. So this is our new Tableau mobile app. It is in beta right now. We've redesigned it from ground up. We've taken inputs from customers. We've created an entirely new navigation experience. One of the new features in this mobile app compared to the old one is offline interactivity. In the old app, you had offline snapshots. You'd see static images if you're not connected to the internet. In this one, you have interactivity, so you can interact with your visitors even when you're offline. There's more about this in an upcoming session right after this. We'll give you details to that session towards the end. And if you would like to try out this app, head over to Data Village, to the self-service kiosk, and somebody there will help you get set up with this right away. All right, so you probably have used Tableau Server, and of course, some of you have used Tableau Mobile app also, and even Tableau Desktop. But how is the mobile platform different? With mobile, there are different operating systems. There's iOS and Android, the most common ones. And users get software for these platforms in the form of apps. They get it from app stores. There's App Store for iOS, and there's Play Store for Android. And with mobile devices, security, there are different security concerns. It's so much more easier to lose a mobile device as compared to a laptop or a workstation sitting at your desk. Bring your own device is common. Users prefer to have their personal phones and use that to connect to Tableau Mobile. And with this comes another challenge of how do we manage personal data that sits right next to work-related data on the same device. Mobile device management, or MDM, is something that will help us address this. We'll talk about this in the upcoming slides. I'm going to hand it over to Paul, and he's going to tell us how to connect to Tableau Server.
All right, so let's get down to the nitty-gritty here. How do we sign into a Tableau server? I've broken this down into 3 different steps. The first step, we just need to connect to that server. We need to make sure that if we send a request, that server receives the request and is able to return data to the device. Next, we want to make sure that connection is secure. Can we trust that server is who it represents itself to be? Or do we have a man-in-the-middle attack or something else going on that would make our data compromised in some way? And finally, conversely, the server needs to be able to trust us as users. We need to be able to authenticate and say, yes, I am that person. I am authorized to see that data. So I've got a little checklist here, and we'll go through these one at a time. Let's start first with connecting. Now, if you're in a corporate environment, you're in the building, inside the firewall, connecting to Tableau Server is simple. You're on this private network or intranet, whatever you want to call it. But the main point is that if I send a request to the Tableau Server, that request and that data is just going to come right back because I have no networking issues. I'm on the same network, wireless, wired, whatever. This is a mobile device we're talking about, though, so at some point we're going to want to go outside of that building, that corporate building, and we'll be outside what is called the firewall. We need to get through that firewall in order to connect to Tableau Server and to get our data. There are a couple of major ways that this happens, and so I'll go through each of these in turn. The first one is called reverse proxy setup, and in this setup, we have a second server that is proxying the communication between the Tableau mobile device through the firewall and into the Tableau server. And so in this scenario, the Tableau mobile app and the mobile device is connected through the network only to the proxy. The proxy then forwards that information to the server, and if things check out, the server will send back the data. Because of this proxy, it becomes a little bit more complicated for the mobile app. It has to know that there is some communication barrier happening, that things may be rerouted or redirected. And there are different flavors of proxy servers, and so sometimes we may encounter a new one, which may mean you would need to connect and talk with our support team or perhaps engage some professional services in order to get this set up correctly. But it's a very common type of setup, and if you've got home users that are using desktops or laptops, there's a very good chance they're connecting with some sort of a reverse proxy like this. So it's a common scenario that may already be in place in your company. Something that's a little more recent is a virtual private network, or VPN. Now, instead of a proxy server, then in theory, there is a tunnel or a port that goes through the firewall. And then Tableau Mobile doesn't really have to know about any intermediate servers. So in this sense, it just sends things into the tunnel that goes to the Tableau server. And again, the Tableau server is able to return that data and those visits so we can take a look at them on our mobile device. Now, this makes it a lot easier for the Tableau mobile app. As I said, it doesn't even realize that it's on a virtual network. It might as well be connected inside the corporate firewall in a private network. However, that leaves the configuration work to happen on a device basis. And so you may have to open a separate VPN app, or if you have VPN that's always on, there's some pre-configuration that needs to happen on your device in order to get that up and running to make it easy for the Tableau mobile app. When Sham talks a little later about MDM, he'll talk about how you can make that easier for your customers inside your company network to use that Tableau mobile app and use the VPN and not have to do so much work with configuration on their own. And finally, if you have a company that's willing to do that, you could just host a Tableau server in the cloud. We do that with Tableau Online, and our online customers can connect to their data anytime they have an internet connection. Many cloud hosting services, Google Cloud, AWS, and have this hosting mechanism. And if you want to have that happen in your corporation, I'm sure there are many vendors down in the data village that are willing to help you with those services as well, if it's something that you're new to. So we recommend this if your data security practices allow it. All right, we've talked a bit about connecting. So this, you'll notice that this looks just like the internal version, the private network. We just connect directly through the cloud and we're there. The main thing is you'll want to talk to your networking department and see what they already have in place. You don't want to be in the business of setting up your own VPN and things like that. Work with your network department. Don't roll the dice. Don't gamble. And you'll have a lot more enjoyable time getting your users your data. Okay, we've talked about connecting. Let's check off that box. And the next thing we want to talk about is trust. Now, when you're entering into a trusting relationship, sometimes it's a philosophical sort of thing. Is, do I really trust that server? Does that server really trust me? Can I really trust anyone? Well, let's talk about how this works in the world of internet traffic. We have hypertext transfer protocol, and we have the secure version of that, HTTPS. Now, if you think of a traffic analogy, you might think of driving a car. Let's say I'm driving northbound on a road. I see an oncoming car driving southbound. Well, we have a protocol to avoid collisions and other problems. The protocol is I drive on the right-hand side of the road, the oncoming person drives on the right-hand side of the road, we pass each other without incident. Of course, this protocol is by no means secure. The other driver could be distracted or impaired, and bad things could happen. Now, if we really wanted a secure traffic protocol to avoid this oncoming traffic problem, we could build big concrete barriers down the middle of the road, and that would prevent any oncoming traffic from crossing over. That's an example of a secure protocol in the real traffic world, and so we would rather have the same thing in the internet traffic world as well. If you're thinking, oh, my company's more like that rural road where we don't need the barriers and we trust everybody coming our way on the road. Well, I want you to take the philosophy of one of the great American philosophers of our time. I'll let you read a quote, and then we'll talk about how this applies to data security. All right, I'll read it for you. When you die, if you get a choice between going to regular heaven or pie heaven, choose pie heaven. It might be a trick, but if it's not, boy. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I love pie. I think chocolate cream pie is probably one of my favorite foods of all time. How about you, Sham? Do you like pie?
I like pie, but I'm more of the fruit pie ball.
Okay.
I think I like apple pie better than cream pie.
All right. Yeah. Fruit pie people, raise your hand.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Cream pie. All right. You're my people. Good job. Hey, if people go both ways, it's fine, though. I don't worry about that. Okay, how about, how does this really apply then to our data protocol? Well, think of it this way. When you choose your data transfer protocol, if you get a choice between an insecure protocol and a secure protocol, choose a secure one. Why? It won't be a trick, so boy. This secure protocol will put you in pie heaven as you try to connect to your users. Now, let's talk a little bit. There are many reasons to use this secure protocol. Security, encryption, avoiding this man-in-the-middle attacks where the server is not who it says it is. But it also enables new scenarios. For example, if you're in a Chrome browser and you want to get geolocation information on a user, if that connection is not secure, Chrome won't allow that to happen. So not only are we protecting ourselves, but we're also opening up new scenarios by using these secure protocols. So let's talk a little bit about how we do that in the internet world. How do we build these big concrete barriers that will keep us protected as we try to ensure that we can trust the server that we're talking to? Well, in the internet world, these barriers take the form of certificates. And there are several well-known certificate authorities across the globe. If you type certificate authority into your search provider, you'll see a list of them. And they provide well-known certificates that are signed, and these certificates are then downloaded to your mobile device or downloaded to browsers. And so when another server wants to present itself as a valid server, authentic server, and who they say they are, we as users can then use this secure protocol to match up these certificates, match up these signatures. So if I'm trying to connect to Tableau Server number 1, and Tableau Server returns me through this secure communication a certificate that's signed by server A, or by certificate authority A. I can compare that against the certificate store I have in my device and say, hey, these match, we're good to communicate, and in fact, we're in pie heaven. We can get all the data we want. All right, similarly, if I am trying to connect to server 2, which has been signed by certificate authority B, that comes back and I see, hey, I've got certificate B in my authority B in my data and my certificate store. Things are going great. We're in pie heaven. Let's talk. What often happens, though, especially in a corporate network environment, is you have certificates that are signed internally. Those are sometimes called self-signed certificates, but the point is, it's a certificate that has been generated and signed by the company itself rather than by one of these well-known certificate authorities. And so what happens in that situation then is I try to connect to Tableau Server My Tableau, which is internal to my company. It comes back and says, hey, I've got a certificate that's signed by a certificate authority called company. And I would love to say we're in pie heaven, but unfortunately, we're not. We are not allowed to communicate with each other. And in fact, when the Tableau Mobile app connects through a secure protocol to a server, if there are any problems in this chain of certificates coming from the server back to the device, then the server will not allow communication the mobile app will not allow server communication to happen. It'll say, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to trust this, and you should work out the certificate problem before you try to connect. Well, here's how we work it out. You notice that the mechanism that we used to validate these certificates was we had a well-known validated version already on our mobile device. So this is what we need to do in the case of a self-signed certificate. We need to get a certificate authority version for that self-signed certificate down onto the mobile device. And so what happens in that situation is your IT department might be able to email you a version of the certificate. You can click on that, get it to be trusted. Or a much easier scenario, as Sean will point out in the MDM section, is you get MDM to deliver those certificates to the mobile device. And then those are already in place, and the user doesn't have to do anything manual in order to get that certificate trusted. Then the same thing happens. We go out and we ask server My Tableau for some data. It comes back and says, I'm signed by by certificate authority company, and we're in pie heaven. That's great. All right, so we've talked not only about connecting, but we talked about trusting. Hey, Sean, can you talk to us a little bit about authenticating to the Tableau server and how that happens?
Sure, Paul, I can do that. All right, so Paul talked to us about how we can connect to a Tableau server and how we can trust the connection with the Tableau server. The third step and the final step before we can get access to our data is authenticating. What do we mean by authentication? We tell the server who we are, and the server says whether it recognizes us or not. And what happens when we authenticate? We get a workgroup session ID. Think of this as a magic key that allows you to have access to content that's there on a Tableau server. A workgroup session ID is unique to every user, so that user will only be able to access content they already have permissions for. The Tableau mobile app supports 3 different types of authentication. There's more. These are the most common ones. The first is local auth, or a user password-based authentication. You're probably quite familiar with this. The second is SAML, and there's also Kerberos. We'll talk about this in a moment. So the first step to authentication is to try and find out what types of authentication are supported by the Tableau server. So when we connect to the server sends us some XML data, and this data contains information about the server version and what types of authentication it supports and a few other things. So right now you can see here I'm connecting to server version 2018.3, and the authentication supported is a user password-based authentication. All right, so in local auth or local authentication, this is the experience that a user would see. When they launch the app, try to connect to a server that supports local auth, they get a prompt, a native prompt, to type in their username and password. So this is the flow of things that happen in a local auth scenario. There's a public key that's obtained from the Tableau server. This is used to encrypt the credentials, and then the encrypted credentials are sent back to Tableau server. Tableau server would then verify and see if the credentials are valid. If everything checks out, you're issued a workgroup session ID, and you have access to Tableau content. There's a slight variation of this. You can have Active Directory set up in your organization. So instead of Tableau server doing the check, Active Directory would do the check for you. All right, for some extra non-redeemable points, can someone tell me what SAML stands for? Any volunteers? All right, I'm going to give it away myself. SAML stands for Security Assertion Markup Language. There's a bunch of words, but I'd like you to focus on the second one, assertion. We'll see that in a moment. SAML has been around since the early 2000s. What it does is it separates the service provider and the identity provider. So then you can use this identity provider for different services in your organization. It could be for Tableau and Salesforce or any other services that you might have. In case of the Tableau mobile app, there are 3 entities involved. The first is the client, the service provider, and identity provider. Tableau Mobile is the client. Tableau Server is the service provider. And an identity provider can be any of the third-party services. Here I have some screenshots of some of the common IDPs that our customers use. This is not a full list of identity providers. These are just the common ones. On the left is Ping, on the right is Okta, and in the center is Tableau Online. So if you've connected to Tableau Online, that is also a SAML experience. I'd like to draw your attention to these screenshots further. There's a username and password field in each of these, but it doesn't have to be a username password authentication for SAML. You can configure it to have security questions. What's your pet's name? What's your mother's maiden name? You could configure it any way you want. One other thing I would like to point out in this screenshot is the username password field here is displayed in a web view. What I mean by a web view is an embedded mobile browser page or embedded web page in the Tableau mobile app. So in the case of Tableau mobile app, when we connect to a server that supports SAML authentication, the Tableau server then redirects us to the identity provider. The identity provider would then display a web page where you'd enter your credentials, be it a username, password, or one of those answers to a security questions, and the identity provider would validate these credentials. If everything checks out, it redirects back with an assertion, and that's what we are really looking for over here. So once the Tableau server gets the assertion from an IDP, it lets the Tableau mobile app know that the SAML sign-in was success, and then we complete the login process, and we get the workgroup session ID, which is what we wanted in the first place. All right, Kerberos is another authentication that we support in the Tableau mobile app. Kerberos is a really old type of authentication. It's been around since the 80s. It's still a really good one. A lot of customers still use this. Like SAML, it also supports single sign-on, which means you can have the same credentials, the same service that you can authenticate into multiple services in your organization. There are a few things about Kerberos. These are prerequisites if you would like to have Kerberos configured with Tableau Server. You need to have certain profiles installed on devices connecting to Tableau Server. These profiles have two pieces of information. They have a user principal name, and they have details about the realm, or that's nothing but the Active Directory domain. If Kerberos fails, you can always have a fallback configured. The fallback can be a user password-based authentication, or it can also be a SAML-based authentication. Let's see what happens in a Kerberos sign-in process. The first step is the Tableau Mobile app connecting to the Kerberos key distributor. We request for an encrypted key. We then use this to decrypt the user certificate. And then we request for a Tableau-specific key. Once we get this key, we are able to sign into Tableau Server, and then we get the workgroup session ID. So the flow diagram there doesn't really do much justice to the power of Kerberos. The key things are the user certificates decodes the key, but did you remember I didn't have to type in, or there was no step there which involved typing in a username or password. I have a little demo that I'd like to show you. This, I'm going to sign into one of our internal servers that connect to, it has a Kerberos-based authentication, and I'd like you to observe the experience that a user has. So I'm going to type in the server name here. Alpo is one of our internal servers, and then tap on the connect button. With other authentication types, you'd expect to see a username, password, or a security question prompt. But in this case, we have quick access to all our workbooks and dashboards, and that's easy. Don't you think that's awesome? Okay. So there it is. We've talked about different types of authentication, and now we have access to dashboards and workbooks on the Tableau mobile app. I think we can check off the third box right there.
Hey, whoa, go back there. Sham, what happened to my chocolate cream pie?
Paul, I switched it for the apple pie. I was hoping you didn't notice that.
That's just wrong. All right.
You caught me there. Okay, I owe you a cream pie, Paul.
I'll make you keep your word on that.
Okay. All right, so that brings us to an interesting conundrum between users and IT. As a user, I don't like to type in my credentials every time I'd like to connect to Tableau or any other app, in fact, for that matter. But as an IT person, I'd like the users to be safe and renew their sessions quite often. There are a few features in Tableau Mobile and Tableau Server that helps us achieve this balance. Remembering credentials is one of the features in the Tableau Mobile app. By default, after 4 hours of not using the app, the credentials expire. You may need to enter credentials again, but it really depends on the type of authentication that's supported in your server. If you have user password-based authentication, there's an option to remember credentials. If that option is checked, you don't have to type in credentials every time. For SAML, you will have to type in credentials every time, but there's an exception to Tableau Online. And with Kerberos, you only need to type in credentials when a ticket renewal is needed, and the timeout for that can always be configured by an administrator. Connected clients is another feature. This is available on the server side, and this is available for both users and administrators to access. When you think of connected clients, think of OAuth tokens. So this is available on Tableau Online for both the iOS and Android apps. And so in connected clients, when a device is connected to Tableau Online, an OAuth token is issued. And if I lose my phone, I can log into Tableau Online from the browser, or an administrator can do it too, and delete the token that has been issued. In this case, my iPhone, if I lose it, I can delete the token, and the session would automatically expire on the phone. So that's another way of keeping data secure on the mobile device. An interesting, yes?
Question. Is there any way
I will have to check. I'm not aware of that right away. But I'll help you find somebody who might know that information.
And it's only available online, not for the standalone servers?
I was just going to get to that in a moment. Yeah, so this is available on Tableau Online for the current app. But in the new app, which is in beta right now, we support OAuth tokens for on-prem servers also. So this would be extended to a larger number of users within having the new mobile app. All right, so we talked about how we can connect to servers and how we can, in some ways, balance the IT and user expectations of the mobile app. But how do we get this mobile app out to the users in an organization? So mobile device management, or MDM in short, is the key here. MDM, or mobile device management, is a server software. It can be hosted on-prem, or there are even cloud-based versions of this. You can, it's a software meant to wrangle mobile devices. You can control and manage company-owned devices. You can manage employee devices, which they would like to use on the corporate network. Here are some of the key features of MDM software. We'll dive right into this in a moment. So in terms of securing devices, you can configure VPN. Paul talked about having VPN and how it makes connecting to Tableau Server quite easy for users outside the corporate network. So one of the easiest ways to configure VPN is using MDM software. So these configurations can be pushed down to devices, and users don't have to worry about what portal you have to connect to. These are readily available for them. You can also configure VPN for the entire device, or it can be for per app. So if you'd like all apps on the phone to be able to access VPN, you can do so. Or if you'd like to restrict VPN access to, let's say, Tableau and not for personal apps like Facebook or Instagram, you can do that too. You can configure devices using MDM software. You can install SSL certificates. Paul talked about self-signed certificates. One of the best ways to push these certificates to users' devices is through MDM software. As in when certificate renewals are needed, you can update them and push the new ones easily. You can install Kerberos certificates. This is the authentication that helps us sign in really easy into Tableau Server. You can manage these certificates using MDM software. You can configure email. And if your organization uses iOS devices, Apple has a program called Device Enrollment Program. It helps you set up devices right out of the box and makes the configuration really easy on a large scale. Any representation from Apple here today? Okay. You can also push apps. This is one of the fundamental things that you can do with MDM software. The advantage of doing so through an MDM software is you can make sure all users in your organization have the same version of the Tableau mobile app. When there's an update to Tableau mobile app, you can push out the update and be assured that everybody is having the same version installed. You can also control which groups of users get which apps. For instance, the sales team might want to have access to Tableau and Salesforce or any other sales-related apps. The dev team might want to have access to Tableau and something else that would help their workflow. And this can be done easily using MDM software. You can also control devices. You can set passcode requirements. You can restrict some of the things users may be able to do on their devices. You can disable camera. You can disable screenshots. Control what apps get to access cellular data and what can have full network access on the device. And in the case of losing a device, an administrator can also remotely wipe out a device. And this is a really important security feature for some of our customers. There are different MDM systems. Tableau mobile app supports primarily two types of MDM systems. The first one we're going to talk about is AppConfig. AppConfig is an industry standard. It's a consortium by Apple and different MDM vendors and Google. They've come together and agreed upon a standard. Tableau mobile app supports AppConfig-based MDM. And these are some of the vendors. These are some of the MDM software that we have tested and tried, and we know absolutely sure that it works with. But in theory, it should work with all MDM software. We just haven't tried all of them yet. Any representation from one of these organizations here? Okay. By a show of hands, anyone at your organization uses any of these software? Okay, that's good to know. All right. The other type of MDM system supported by the Tableau mobile app is an SDK-based integration. This is slightly different. These MDM systems require an SDK, that their SDK be integrated with the Tableau mobile app. This is extra work, and this is published as a separate app in the App Store. In case of app config, you could download the regular app from App Store, and it should just work with app config. With SDK integration, there are different apps for different MDM vendors. Earlier this year, we added support for BlackBerry, and we are also working on adding support for other vendors. Anybody here who uses BlackBerry MDM in their organization? Okay, good to know. And any other AirWatch and so on? Okay, nice to know. Yeah, this support coming for other vendors soon. So app config is something that helps us customize the Tableau mobile app, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But just something that I had to share with you. From time to time, we run into a lot of configuration problems with these different MDM software. And our IT, when they run into trouble, they reach out to MDM vendors. They're really helpful. They have great documentation, and they'll help you get set up very easily. So we want to create a frictionless sign-in process. We want to create an enjoyable experience for the users. How do we get that extra mile configuring the Tableau mobile app? App config is one of the ways to do it. As I mentioned earlier, it's an industry standard. There's more details available on their website. So what happens in app config? We download the MDM software downloads the mobile app from the App Store. So you're assured that you have the same version of the mobile app for all users. It pushes them to the different devices in your organization. And along with the app being pushed down, it pushes an XML file. This XML file contains key value pairs that the Tableau mobile app would then read at launch time. And depending on what the key value pairs are, it would customize the Tableau mobile app. Let's see what some of these customizations are. Before that, here are some of the key value pairs. These are available on the Tableau documentation. So if you go to the Tableau website and just search for Tableau Mobile App Config, you should get these right away. Here's the default sign-in experience on the Tableau mobile app. So this is when a user is trying to connect to a server. There's a text box, and there's a quick connect to Tableau Online button. You can either connect to Tableau Online, or you can type in a server name and connect to one of that. But what if I had a custom server in my organization and I didn't want my users to type in the server name every time? So we'd use the app service host key value. So you can specify a key and a value. In this case, the values are going to be two Tableau servers. There's a tableauexample.com, tableausalesexample.com. And what this would do is create a custom server field in the Tableau mobile app. You can go further and customize this. I can add friendly names using app service labels and custom host title. So this would give a more clean name for the servers. And you can also have a title for the custom server section. But what if you wanted to restrict your users to access only these two servers, but not connect to any other server? Or what if your organization doesn't connect to Tableau Online? There's an option to customize that using hide server name field and remove Tableau Online button. These two key values help us to either completely remove the text box where users can type in a custom server name, or disable the Tableau Online button if that's something you don't use. So we talked about different types of authentication. These are some really nice ways to customize the Tableau mobile app. So you can combine these features that we offer to create a frictionless sign-in and really enjoyable experience for users. All right, so the next section is back to Paul. Tell us about Lanyapps, Paul.
Lanyapps, yeah. Hey, is anybody here from New Orleans? All right, so does anybody happen to know what Lanyapps are? You might have seen that word out on the wall out there. A lanyap is something a little bit extra that's given. So you can think of it as that 13th donut in a baker's dozen, or some candy you give somebody for coming through your line at the grocery store. You've been a great audience. You've listened to the meat of our presentation, and so we've got a few lanyards here for you. First one is, we talked a little bit about offline data, but your IT department, especially if you're very security conscious, is going to want to know some more specifics about what is going on. When that phone leaves the building, what data is on it? Well, if you favorite a viz, a dashboard, or workbook on Tableau Server, then we'll create a cache on the mobile device and we'll download that data to your mobile device so it's available when you're offline, whether inside or outside the corporate firewall. And as Shyam mentioned, current versions download snapshots, so images of your favorites. And then, as was shown in our Devs on Stage this morning, we're getting into some interactive versions as well. We'll be supporting highlighting and scrolling and tooltips and a few things like that with the upcoming version. Now, those favorites are refreshed at regular intervals, and so that you always have a reasonably fresh version on your phone. Of course, you can always pull to refresh and on demand get the latest information as well. That's stored on your device and available when you leave. Now, if you sign out of the server or if you delete the app altogether, that data is gone. We don't want it hanging around for someone else to be able to view. And then finally, if you have an IT department that isn't really comfortable with that, we can turn that off as well. So that's configurable on a per site basis. If you go into the site administration settings page on the Tableau on your Tableau site, there's an option there partway down the screen that is enable offline favorites for Tableau Mobile. If you uncheck that box, then the Tableau Mobile app will not request any favorites at all, so you don't need to worry about that data ever coming down to the device. All right, how was that for a tasty lanyap? Here's the next one. If you're in a situation where you connect to maybe a company portal, it's a web page, and they've embedded some Tableau vizzes and just created this custom experience for you, you may wish that the Tableau mobile app would be that customizable as well. Maybe you could put in your own icon or your own color scheme or things like that. We're not likely to support that anytime soon. However, we've created what we call the mobile app bootstrap. That's some boilerplate code that will help you get far along the way to creating your own mobile app. It'll show you how to reference the vizzes that you want to. And then you can use the platform tools, whether it's iOS or Android, to add in icons, create a theme that looks like your company's app, because it is your company's app. We had a couple sessions on this earlier this week, and so we recommend that you look at that when you get home and take a look at the slides and get in touch with us if you're interested in doing that. We're always happy to hear what's going on in that area. All right, here's yet another fun lanyap. When you try to connect to a server that has a self-signed certificate or somewhere along this trust chain of certificates, something's not working, we recommend a couple of different apps, SSL Detective and Certificate Inspector. There are also a couple of websites. If you search for the Android Certificate Detective or something like that, there's a couple of websites that work there as well for your Android devices. And that'll help you just do some sleuthing on the chain of what's happening between the mobile device and the server. We found a lot of good information from those, and it's made it a lot easier for our support department to help our users debug their issues in that area. Oh, speaking of support department, here's our final lanyap, I guess you could call it. If you are having trouble and you're not able to authenticate, or you're having trouble connecting, and you need to open a support ticket with our support department, then we recommend turning this setting on. It's found in the settings area of your app. And what happens when you do that is, number one, we increase the logging level, so we'll log more specific things about the type of server you're trying to connect to and what HTTP status codes we're getting back, things like that, so that the support team will have some very detailed information about what's going wrong. The second thing that will happen is, the next time you shake your device, is we'll bring up a dialog that is a mobile, that's an email template that will be pre-filled in with the Tableau Mobile support alias. And then you can type in any information about what you were trying to do. If you've got an open support case, you can type that in. And then you hit send, and that'll go off to the Tableau Mobile support team with that detailed log information attached. And we find that most, especially authentication and connection kind of errors, are debugged through the use of these logs. Now, if you're in a company that doesn't want you sending that log information outside, that's fine. Just change the email alias from Tableau Mobile to support to your internal IT support and send them the detailed log. And then they can help you debug through it if that's something they would rather do than have Tableau Mobile look at potentially a server name or something like that. All right. As we wind down here, we want to remind you that there is quite a bit of information available on the Tableau website about the topics that we've discussed today. Security in general, this mobile app Bootstrap, how you can use app config to get your app up and running and enjoyable for your users to sign into. And then finally, a couple of sessions. Sean mentioned that there's an upcoming session next hour about the Tableau Mobile Beta app. It's called Tableau Mobile Rising, and they'll compare the current capabilities with the upcoming ones in beta. So if that's something that interests you, we certainly recommend that. And then anytime you want to stop by that self-service kiosk down in the Data Village, we've got help about, we can help you set things up. We can help you get a beta version of the app. We have labs running every once in a while. And so we'd recommend that you go down there and learn more about our offerings in the mobile space. Previously this week, we've had some talks about Tableau Mobile, this mobile app Bootstrap, as well as a couple about just creating vizzes that work well in a mobile environment for the mobile device size and things like that. So if that's part of your job, then these will be really helpful for you as well. We also noticed, although unfortunately we weren't able to watch, a couple of customer sessions. They happened to be going on at exactly the same time our talk's going on, so we couldn't go watch them, otherwise we certainly would have. But we imagine there's some good information there about how some of your fellow corporate employees have been, and companies have been putting Tableau Mobile into their environments as well. Well, we're winding up, and we've got several minutes here for question and answers, and so here's a reminder of what we talked about, and please, let's take them. Go ahead. Yeah, great question. So the latest Tableau mobile app that's out in the App Store will work with all of the Tableau supported servers. So I think we might be supporting the last version of 9 something right now, or either that or it's up to 10.0, somewhere in that area. But the Tableau mobile app will connect and will work with all of those supported servers. So it's just one app for all the servers. They're not server specific.
Do you have any use cases of like government e-authentication going through the mobile app?
Government? I'm not personally aware of any, but as Sham talked about, in the SAML setup especially, you have this third-party identity provider, and some of the information could come from a card reader or from biometric information. However you want to, however that identity provider says, oh, I recognize you, as long as that assertion comes back to the server, then we're good to go. So it should work.
Yep. Over here and then there.
So just quickly on the service logs, going back, where is that setting? Is that in the app or is that in the server? Where the user would put in the that's a problem.
Yeah, no, that's a send support log setting is in the app. And so if you're familiar with iOS settings, there's a separate settings app, and so you'll scroll through and find Tableau and then turn on the setting there. It's off by default because we don't want you walking around and every time you shake your device, you send an email to us. So, and then Android, it's in its own, it's actually internal, there's just a settings menu for that.
Okay, over there, and then I think then we have a question here. Yep.
I don't know if it's already there or if it's coming. There's a feature that allows you to use geolocation as a filter.
Geolocation as a filter. That would be a question for me to ask somebody at the self-service kiosk.
Yeah, so we can. So there's two answers to that question. One is, if you're in a map and there's a thing to say, set my location, like move the map to my location, and then you can have like a radial filter, but that's just filtering things on the map. So if you wanted to, say, have a list of all your customers within a 10-mile radius or something like that, that's not available currently. However, you can create a web page, and this is something that would be great in the mobile app Bootstrap, because you could get that information from the system, put it in as parameters into a viz, and then you could use those parameters to calculate distances. So it's a workaround now, but it's a high, we get that request a lot. We'll have it in the app eventually, for sure.
Oh, here?
Any best practice around like two-factor authentication for user experience?
Yeah, two-factor authentication is definitely supported. SAML is one of the ways you can have two-factor authentication supported. There are other ways you can do, but if you're trying to have some sort of a proxy and two-factor, I would say try to get in touch with Tableau support, and somebody will help you do that. But two-factor authentication with SAML is definitely supported.
Do you know how to use Duo?
Sorry?
Do you know how to use Duo for that?
I am not familiar with that. I don't think we do that right yet.
It's two-factor authentication.
Okay.
Do you know if is it a SAML based? Because it should work if it is, but
I just know that we use that.
I know it's certificate based, so you log into a server site, you're issued a certificate, a static certificate for that site, and then it sends a push notification to an app on your phone that allows you to authenticate.
Okay, I don't believe that is.
yeah, here's one
Okay.
of our authentication PMs is saying not yet.
Yeah,
Is
he
there
says.
a question
yeah.
over here, or did we miss one over? If not, we'll come back here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we have, so that is one of the things that the current mobile app, like if you have your favorites set up, then it will go through, and every 4 hours, depending on when you've scheduled your background jobs on the server, it'll go through and get new data so that once you connect through Wi-Fi again, it can just bring the data down. And so we're with it down to your mobile device. Yeah, and so the new version, we're working through just the sort of the balance of pre-generating stuff that you may not use and putting extra load on the server versus doing it on demand, and you may have to wait a little longer for it. And so we're not ready to say this is going to work exactly one way or the other. So, but we will have a scenario like that in the new one.
Yep. There was another question.
Does the MDM software that you listed, does that work with all the versions of Tableau Server?
So the MDM is something that affects the Tableau Mobile app. So it's the compatibility is with the Tableau Mobile app. There should be no issues connecting to a server through one of these MDM softwares. But yeah, in essential, the ones that we listed there, we've tested and made sure they're compatible with the Tableau Mobile app. Yep.
One of your slides listed iOS. Does the tune support only for Apple devices?
Right, so app config in the current mobile app is only for iOS, but the new mobile app that's in beta is going to support for both Android and iOS both. So the one that's in the App Store currently supports, is only supported for iOS.
And it only supports the app config part of it.
Yeah.
So we use AirWatch at Tableau, and AirWatch downloads a new Tableau mobile app to my Android device on a regular basis. It just doesn't have that extra configuration support yet. So it still works with MDM systems. It's just that extra, customization of the sign-in experience isn't there. Yeah. So yeah, you can put it just in the AirWatch container, so it's only available like that for iOS and Android now. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Before you guys, we've got more time, but I just want to remind everybody, especially if you're a Pi lover, go in, give us a good rating. And please let us know if you have any feedback or things that you think you want to know more about in depth, and we'll make sure we put it on our slide next year. But we've got a few more minutes, so we'll keep taking questions. What's that?
Pie chart. There was
Oh
one
yeah,
question there.
I know
Come back
we've
here.
got no pie charts here. Sorry.
Yep.
Okay, question.
Questions around offline. So when you, for example, if I select a web page.
Why don't we wrap up the session, and then if you want to come up and talk to us afterwards, we'd be glad to take your questions. All right. Thanks everybody for coming.